This is a very serious video. Australia was known for the longest time as the lucky country. But it seems right now that our left-wing government here has taken the lead of other governments across the world and decided that their people, the ones that elected them, cannot be trusted. They must be controlled. And if they dare speak their mind, then hey, let's put them in jail. We saw it happen in the UK. We saw them go to jail because they posted things that were offensive, or they lost their jobs because they posted things that were apparent mis or disinformation. And those two words are key here because they are the new buzzwords. Over the past 5 years or so, we've had these buzzwords float around, or these phrases. Think do the right thing. Think free Palestine. Think free Ukraine. These things that you hear all the time. Don't worry about the content of what those phrases mean. Think about how much you hear them. It's constant. It's all the time. It's all you hear on the news. It's like they've written a script and it has been given out to every single news provider. This mainstream coverage of these events seems so designed. Throughout Kamala Harris's campaign, she spoke a lot, and so did Tim Walz, her VP, spoke a lot about mis and disinformation and how that is somehow involved with hate speech, and that's not free speech, and we should control that. Their election campaign was destroyed for a number of reasons, but that's one of them. Because the people look at that and go, are you kidding me? There is no way we want that. And yet, even though we know that that is a terrible way forward for any political party, our Prime Minister here in Australia does the exact same thing. Anthony Albanese. He goes, well, we need to really control speech in this country because speech is dangerous. I'm paraphrasing, but the lisp is accurate. And what the Australian government did during the US election, mind you, while everybody was watching the election, the very day they introduced this bill into Parliament, this idea, this concept, into the first stage of passing a law. The Communications Minister, Michelle Rowland, said after the bill was passed through the House of Representatives, the first step, all right, on Thursday, the day of the election, I think it won by like 13 votes. It was something like 59 to 40, whatever. Something like that. It's necessary for keeping Australians safe. This bill will increase the transparency and accountability of the actions of digital platforms whilst balancing the freedom of expression that is at the very core of our democracy. No, it won't. What you're doing is you're trying to control what I say, what you say, and what anyone in this country says. This is not good. This is not what veterans fought for the last 100 or so years. This is not what people think about when they think about a fair and free society here in this country, the lucky country. This is a fucking outrage, and you should be filthy. What makes matters worse is that this is similar to another bill or another idea that the previous government had, who was on the complete other end of the political spectrum. Our two-party preferred system is absolutely inept. They're the same fucking party. A few little details different here and there, but they're very much the same. I cannot understand, and this is going to come across as quite outrageous to say, how can we have two political parties that are so vastly different and yet they agree that freedom of expression and free speech, at its very core, free speech is something that needs to be controlled by a new law. If anything should go into law in Australia, is that freedom of speech is absolutely protected. I don't give a fuck what anyone says. I don't care, all right? If you are offensive, if you are mean, as long as you don't threaten anyone with violence, as long as you don't call for violence on anyone, then anything you say, anything you do, like the dude who got arrested with the Third Reich symbol, put his hand up in the air outside of the court. He shouldn't go to jail because of that. He's a fuckwit, but he shouldn't go to jail. Who are these people to control what we do? The sounds we make with our body, the ideas that we have, and this is the fucking problem. First, they'll control what you can post on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or TikTok or YouTube. Then they're going to control what you say at work. Then they're going to control everything else about what you do and how you think. And if you don't believe that they will try to control your very thoughts, then you have a very short memory. Mis and disinformation is just a term that's thrown around to discredit people who are saying things that don't agree with the mainstream narrative. Look at fluoride in water. That's been the biggest conspiracy for how many years? The longest time. But now people are coming out, government bodies are coming out, researchers are coming out saying the higher the fluoride in the water, the lower the IQ of the people. But me saying that in Australia is mis or disinformation, even though there are scientific studies to suggest it. So what are we hiding from? What will be taken away from our thought processes if we don't allow people to think clearly and freely? And this all stems from the World Economic Forum in 2024. Their global risk report pointed to misinformation and disinformation as the biggest short-term risk in basically in the world, or the threat to the modern world, or the first world, alongside climate change and extreme weather, which, if you disagree with any of that, it's also mis or disinformation. It's smart. In Australia, if this bill continues to pass through, the proposed laws will give the Australian Communications and Media Authority, ACMA, power to monitor digital platforms and require them to keep records about mis and disinformation on their networks. So if you say something, go back a few years ago to a particular illness. If you say any of those things, then they keep that record, maybe they shut you down, and they do whatever they want. Whatever they want, whatever the government wants, they will do. We know that some of the things that people were saying back then, a lot of the things that people were saying back then, which was called mis and disinformation at the time, has now turned out to be factually true. What are we not going to hear now that will turn out to be true later on? Because the government wants to control what people can say and how people think. All of this is coming from our Prime Minister, who complained and had the shits because people were making memes about him. This is a fucking weak man. There's so much more important shit in the world and your own country that you need to sort out. Like, fucking people can't afford to buy food, rather than worrying about what fucking Alex Jones is saying on the internet, or Australia's version of Alex Jones. This is madness. Elon Musk has been very critical of Anthony Albanese, and the Australian government has been going after X and threatening to fine them and all. Fuck off.
Prime Minister, what's your response to Elon Musk calling your government fascist?
Well, social media has a social responsibility. If Mr. Musk doesn't understand that, that says more about him than it does about my government.
Politicians, like, I know everyone hates politicians, but they have this air, like more of an air of arrogance around them since 2020, since that all happened. They feel like they have this power to do whatever they want. And I fear that the only way out of this, and this might upset some people, is Australia needs a Trump. Because both parties are fucked. We need someone to put their hand up who's going to clear out all the shit. And hopefully Trump does that in America. He said he didn't do it the first time because as soon as he got in, people were like, no, you got to pick this person to run this person to do that. Hopefully we can have someone in this country that clears out all the shit and actually keeps the bastards honest. That's what the left-wing party, the Labor Party, used to do, and they don't do it anymore.
Oh, no way. Peter Dutton's going to be on Joe Rogan. I don't think that's true. I keep falling for it. That's it. I'm going to ban this. Ban what? Misinformation? Uh-huh. Can I have a look? Sure. Oh, this bill isn't very good. What do you mean? Well, your definition of misinformation is pretty broad, and I don't see a clear definition of harm. Whoa, you've exempted yourself from these rules? Of course.
On top of all of that, the definition of mis and disinformation is... What does that even mean? It's so broad, even in the bill itself. And people who are exempt from it include the government, okay? Not to be, like, this whole thing fucking stinks. They try and sneak it under everyone's noses. They're exempt from it, and the actual definition doesn't really exist. That fucking stinks to high heaven, mate.
Whoa, you've exempted yourself from these rules?
Of course.
So the government can never be wrong? No? Right. So the time we invaded Iraq with the US over weapons of mass destruction when there weren't any was... Yeah, give me that back. Oh, look, Trump just got elected.
In the same week this all happened, the government also announced that, well, you can't use social media if you're under the age of 16. And to get access to social media, which, let's face it, all kids want to do. And I'm not even going to argue the point about the 16-year-olds using Facebook or Twitter or TikTok and all that shit. I was at that age, and I'm fine-ish. But to get online, to use those platforms, you have to now provide ID and create a digital ID. What will that digital ID do? Probably nothing for now. Probably won't mean anything. But what in 50 years? What in 25 years? When there's a whole new government in control? Do we trust them with the digital IDs? Will you have to produce your digital ID at a traffic stop? Will you have to produce it when you go to the grocery store? And maybe you get cheaper food if you've been behaving. What if you've been spreading mis and disinformation? Maybe you have to pay more for your food. Maybe you have to pay more for groceries and more for fuel. And maybe I'm being a bit conspiratorial, and I apologise for that. It's just stressing me out. On top of all of that, in Queensland right now, which is a big state here in Australia, they are looking to push through other laws which control what you say and what you think. They will be able to, I believe, if this law passes, do what they're doing in the UK. And if you talk shit about someone, if you're mean to someone who is of a defined, protected class, be that a gay person, be that someone who's come from a different country, be that someone who's disabled, whatever. If you talk some shit, if you say something mean, you might just go to jail.
Well, this is a very dark day in Australia's history, ladies and gentlemen, because this week the Respect at Work and Other Matters Amendment Bill 2024 was passed in Queensland Parliament. Well, what does this mean for you? Well, from now on, we're going to have to police our thoughts and our speech very carefully on social media. And here's why. Any post made on social media now is deemed by this bill to be a public act. And any public act found offensive by a reasonable person of the minority community that it describes is then chargeable under Section 52A of the Criminal Code. And these charges carry a maximum sentence of 3 years jail time. This bill is the most egregious encroachment of freedom of speech that I have ever seen in Australia. And worse still, this is a piece of legislation that is self-protecting in the sense that to speak out against it is to be in contravention of it.
It's what's happening in the UK. Is that what they're trying to do here as well? It's like they can't read the room. You cannot be serious with this shit. This is why, if you're sitting there going, fucking how did Donald Trump win? This is why, because no one trusts any of these other ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what to say about this. This is worrying. Hopefully, the Australian Parliament does its job and fucks this bill off, but I'm not confident. I'm not sure. But you know what you can do in the meantime? You can head to isaacbutterfield.com and grab tickets to my upcoming shows. They're very good. You should see me live. Very, very good. And next week, Black Friday sale on my book, 25% off. Fucking not bad at all. Be a good motherfucker. Peace in the Middle East. Me dig stinks. Toodaloo au revoir. Bye-bye.